Any other discussion or input on the calendar? Okay, moving on to item number 11, new business. Item A, assessment report of town records.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor and Board. So, as part of my job as the manager, it was brought to my attention that there was some inconsistency with some of our payroll records and some of our town records. And the interim town manager prior to me brought some of this stuff to my attention. I looked into it and I did not feel like that I unilaterally should be looking into this, so I called upon the services of Miss Beth Wood. You may recognize her name. She's a retired state auditor. She's known across the state for looking into local government challenges and investigations. So we called her in as a third party, and she did a one-day assessment last week. She's here to make a report in person, and Jeanette's going to pass out that report to council and to the attorney, so there's a record of that. So Ms. Wood, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members, and Mr. Rollins. As Mr. Rollins stated, I came in last week based on some irregularities that were reported to him, and I did an assessment, gathered evidence based on those irregularities, and spent time pretty much all day last Tuesday, and then took some of this information back to my office, and in front of you is the report. What I've done is put together a letter, and on the first and second pages are a summary, if you will, of the allegations, assertions that were made. And then on page 3, attachment 1, I have put together a more detailed listing of some of the issues that were noted, the evidence that was used to confirm or negate or to make further recommendations down the road. So on the first one on page 3, there was the assertion that the former town employees were paid for accrued vacation time and other personal time off leave, which may have violated town policy. Under that first item, one former town employee was paid for 66 hours of accrued vacation time over and above the 240 hours earned in 2023. And this was evidenced by the employee payroll and town policy. In looking at this, there was a conversation around extenuating circumstances and what the policy that the town has today allows. So I went back, and initially the policy was that anything over 240 hours of accrued vacation at the end of a year would roll into sick time for in the next year. And I looked at, and then the policy was changed in 2013, and that policy was changed to state that the town manager had the discretion to approve accrued vacation leave to be paid, and it was under extenuating circumstances. There's no justification that this person had any extenuating circumstances. I ran by the policy by former LGC secretary and SBI agent and asked their opinion of extenuating circumstances. For the way it's been used at the state of North Carolina and other governments that have this policy, extenuating circumstances run to the effect of medical bills, financial hardships, things of that nature. And then if you look at the minutes, January 8th of 2013, which I did, you'll note in those minutes there was extensive conversation around changing that policy where there was an automatic rollover of anything over 240 hours to bringing it back to extenuating circumstances at the discretion of the town manager. And in that conversation, in those discussions, in those meetings, you saw noted the fact that there was verbiage to be put in the policy. It did not include extenuating circumstances. And then another council member stepped up and said, but we need to include extenuating circumstances. So everything around that led the spirit of what this policy should be is that it's looking for extenuating circumstances that have been defined across many governments. Now, I will tell you this in my recommendations. based again on conversations with the former Secretary of the Local Government Commission, SBI agent, the fact that extenuating circumstances has not been defined. Now, again, conversation around when that policy was changed in 2013, the town had an employee who suffered health and safety hardship. I believe the heat went out in December. And so the extenuating circumstance there was a financial need to be paid for some accrued vacation. Under the current policy, it could not be, so the policy was changed to include extenuating circumstances, and that is the premise of the, I did not interview the former employee. If there's a deeper dive here, I would do that to confirm that that was the impetus for this policy change and the circumstances, what extenuating circumstances mean. However, my recommendation here is that the council give examples of or define extenuating circumstances so no town manager moving forward for decades will have the opportunity to misinterpret or not go within the spirit of this council or the former council that put this policy in place. The other thing I recommend is that the way this policy works, in everywhere I've seen, any local government that I've worked with, state government, is that at the end of a calendar year, anything over 240 hours automatically rolls into sick leave, automatically. And that is done immediately after December 31st. In this case, this person was paid in March for the accrued vacation from the prior year. So again, my recommendation is for council to ensure, the town manager to ensure that whatever policy you go with, that this rollover is done immediately after December 31st. On page 4, continuing, one former town employee appears to have been paid for vacation time not earned. This employee was a part-time employee as of calendar year. I'm so used to dealing in fiscal years, and for this purposes, it's a calendar year. So for this person at the end of 2023, she had accumulated 144 hours of accrued vacation. It appears that her vacation was accrued as if she was a full-time employee, and so when she left the town's employment, she was paid for all those hours, which were 237.2 hours, and there's no evidence that could be located in a personnel file, in emails, or anything that suggested that her status for 2023 was ever moved to full-time and to accrue that amount of vacation time. And then, so the recommendation was to get the money repaid from the employee because, again, she's been paid out for more time than she was supposed to get. When I looked at the rehire letter of this employee when she was rehired in 2015, the verbiage in the rehire letter specifically stated the employee was part-time and would be earning benefits at 50%. So again, no evidence to refute anything else that I saw on this employee. Middle of the page 4, there are 3 former employees that were paid by the former finance officer for 14 hours of personal time off and petty leave. Those hours of 14 hours is made up of 6 hours of petty leave and 8 hours of personal time off. The supporting evidence was their employee pay stub, and for my findings, town policy. The town policy on petty leave specifically states that this is petty leave given to be used and is not to be reimbursed or paid out to the staff member. And in these 3 cases, it was. The town policy on personal time off, it basically says that this is 8 hours given by the town for personal time off to be used for anything. This is treated like accrued vacation. It was paid out to these 3 employees, and according to the policy, again, I believe this was paid out in violation of the policy, both of those items. On page 5, the former town manager was paid accrued vacation time exceeding 240 hours, maximum violating town policy. The former town manager was paid 54 hours. Again, if you go back to the 2013 January minutes, in that discussion that was recorded in those minutes, it was suggested that the being able to pay accrued vacation to employees still working here at the discretion of the town manager for extenuating circumstances. In those minutes, it was stated and suggested that the town manager himself would have to come to council if that's what he or she would want. In 2017, the former finance officer did bring to council at that time to give the town manager pay him for accrued vacation. The town council approved it, but with the stipulation that the town manager would never go over the 240 hours again, and if he did, it would not be paid but roll over into sick leave. There was a memo from the former town manager asking the former finance officer to pay him for his 54 hours. She did so, and I cannot find any evidence of board approval that this body approved that payout. At the bottom of page 5, it was alleged there was a former town employee resigned a position initially on May 17th, but booked a hotel room, paid for it in advance by credit card for a conference that she was attending in August of 2025. This was after she was leaving the town. The charges for the room was $917.39. The credit card bill is the evidence to support that. Also, it was noted that through the town's records, the former finance officer on her last day paid for that credit card bill, obviously without any approvals for that bill, because anybody looking at the bill will go, no, we're not going to do that because this person no longer works here, so the town's not going to be picking up that bill. The town management currently was able to obtain $688 of that money back, but the hotel did retain $229 of that money for an overnight stay. And again, the council making sure that departing employees do not have the means to put the town's finances at risk. In the middle of page 6, a former town employee was paid accrued vacation, but no federal taxes were withheld from the payout. There was a payout made to an employee for all of his, he's leaving the town, resigning from the town, for all of his accrued vacation. The town paid him for his accrued vacation and took out federal taxes according to his W-4 form. The employee comes back and says, I don't want any federal taxes taken out of that check. And so the former finance officer gave him the additional money. Now, what I don't know is, was the whole first check canceled and a new one was given or direct deposit, but I do know that there was a total payout for the net and then what the federal taxes were. And so this person has been paid out for the accrued vacation with no federal withholding taxes. This is in violation of the IRS rules. Unless your W-4 states that you are an exempt employee, then the town has to take out federal withholding taxes. When you report what got paid out and what taxes were paid, the town's going to be held accountable for penalties, as is the employee who didn't have the taxes withheld. My recommendation is to get the money back from the employee and pay the withholding taxes that the town is liable for. On page 7, the former town manager initiated and carried out a personal public records request, possibly in violation of town policy. So the town manager initiated a public records request. The request, the public records request, did not flow through the town clerk as directed by town policy. The documentation shows that the former town manager felt like his public records request wouldn't be filled, and so he went straight to the IT vendor, Gray and Creech, and asked them to fulfill his public records request. They did, and so the attorney has never had a chance to look at the records from the town that have been given to this former town manager. GS Journal Statutes 132 states that no communication between an attorney and the town can be given out unless the town agrees that communications can be given out. So because nobody at the town, not the clerk, not the attorney, nobody's seen this documentation of what records the former town manager received, my recommendation is to get a copy of those records that were given to the former town manager, and the attorney look through them and certainly decide what to do with any confidential information that's been given to this former town manager. And the other recommendation is for the council to ensure that no town manager can operate outside of what they are responsible and what their authority is. And in this case, circumventing that policy, this former town manager was operating outside of town policy. The bottom of page 7, a former town employee was working and running a personal business during working hours and using town resources. There's evidence on the town server to support the claims that a town employee has been running a personal business since 2012 and been doing it on town time and using town resources. The supporting evidence is that there is a folder on the server that has a lot of files and data to support this allegation and this claim. And I'm recommending that whether it be done through a forensics IT audit, for somebody to go back through and try and determine how much of the town's time and how much of the town's resources has been used by this employee. And then the other, it's an obvious that there are some controls in place to ensure that no employee can run a business, a personal business. I mean, I see you've got a policy on secondary employment, being involved in that secondary employment, that the town is the first obligation of an employee, but obviously for a number of years, 2012, I think to 2021, this person was running a business on the side. On page 8, these are other assertions, and I think further investigation is needed. The first ones are information technology related. This assertion was that town records have been removed or destroyed by departing staff. So because the town's IT vendor was on site at the day of the departure of the former town manager, he admitted that the former town manager was spent a better part of the day removing files from the town's server and computers.
I'm sorry, could you say that one more time?
The IT vendor, this is Green Creek, when I asked the question, they admitted that when they were on site, that the former town manager was removing from his computer files, and for the better part of the day. I think that the town should request an IT forensics audit, and this was further confirmed. So because of these assertions, your current town manager asked the not the same IT vendor, but the company that backs up the town's data every day, every week. Asked them for a download of the last backup the 1st of January. And then he asked them for another backup, what's been backed up, as of June 10th. And there's 119,000 gigabytes less on June 10th than there was on January 11th. January 1, I'm sorry. So recommendations, the town should request an IT forensics audit to determine what data has been removed from the town's server and or computer, determine what data may need to be restored that actually belongs to, because the former town manager said, I'm removing pictures, I'm removing personal files. Well, that in and of itself is a problem because you've got a policy that says you can't use town resources, town assets for your personal use. But anyway, basically it was telling the Gray and Creech that it was removing pictures, but again took the better part of a day. And then to determine if any further actions need to be pursued by the council based on this action. Again, this needs to be investigated further. The data that's missing from January to June, this is based on what the assertion was and what my conversation with Gray and Creech was. I talked with the Vice President of Sales and I talked with the person who was actually on site, and so this needs further investigation. Also, on the bottom of page 8, during the transition from the former town manager to the interim town manager and finance officer, access to the town's IT systems and passwords were withheld inappropriately. Again, this is an assertion. I've had conversations, as I said, with the VP of Sales and the person who really handles the town's IT needs, and both of them are saying they never got a document that says this is who's going to be taking the former town managers, and so they didn't give out anything to anybody, and so they should not. I mean, people picking up a phone call and saying, I want access, I want access, I want access. You do not. They did exactly what y'all wanted them to do, not give access to anybody. And so I believe this is already being put in place, but my recommendation was that the town council, when you've got this kind of transition, so there should be one person that handles the access to the computers and the sensitive data, and one person to handle the passwords, giving them out, taking them back, making sure, that kind of thing. At the same time, if that person decides to leave, there needs to be a plan for transition, and the vendor, IT vendor, needs to know what that is and what y'all want them to do. Again, I believe given sort of the situation and conversation, I'm not sure that the passwords withheld inappropriately. I think that just Gray and Creek did their job. I think they did their job. And then bottom of page 9, town equipment was tampered with, making them inoperable until repairs were made. Per the athletic park irrigation system contractor, he's saying that a fuse in the sprinkler system had been removed by someone who had access to the system. The sprinklers had not been run for most of the spring and summer, and when they were finally got them running again, it took quite a few repairs. So again, making sure that people that have access, once you know somebody is leaving and they're working out a notice, there really should be some controls in place, because you never know what somebody might be harboring. So again, it's not personal, it's just good business. What I tell people all the time, controls, good internal controls, good policies and procedures mean that I can put anybody in that seat, take them out anytime, and things roll like they're supposed to roll. So again, we get comfortable because we work for somebody for a long time, but again, you never know what they might be harboring or whatever. So put your policies and procedures in place to protect the town against the kinds of things that I reported to you here tonight. So again, I am recommending, there certainly needs to be a forensics IT audit done for several of these issues that I laid out, and there certainly needs to be a deeper dive probably into the financial transactions. I'll also tell you this, there are members who have said there were boxes of records. People have talked to us, there are boxes of records on top of the file cabinets, and they're all gone now, and there's no paper in anybody's office that departed, no paper, and all is gone. And there's also been a citizen who saw some boxes being dumped by a departing employee. So again, some things that there needs to be a deeper dive on most of these issues. And some that I've talked about initially, again, better policies in place to make sure that these kinds of things can't happen in the future. And I'll, Mr. Mayor, take any questions if anybody has any.
I know I have questions, but that was a lot to digest. I'm going to need a moment just to kind of put some of these questions into thought.
Heath, while you're doing that, I want to follow up with something. Is it Ms. Luther back there? I don't have my glasses on.
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to ask them a question so that I can ask you a question, if it's okay. Mr. Romans, Ms. Luther, there's a phone that is owned by the town. It's a phone line, I understand. And that phone has messages on it that belongs to the town. Did we have access to all of the messages, or did some of those messages, are they inaccessible because some of them are using iMessage? And from what I recall, there might be some discussion that those are not accessible now. Do we know?
I am currently in custody of that phone. That was the town manager's phone. It's in my desk drawer. To be quite honest, I don't use that phone, but we still have custody of it. But to my knowledge, there was no records, there you are, that were on it. But this is the first really question about that phone, but maybe Ms. Luther can answer it.
So I do not have an iPhone, so forgive me if I'm saying something wrong. From what I understand, if you have an iPhone, you can have what's called an Apple ID. And if you have an Apple ID and you're texting from one Apple product to another Apple product, it goes into the cloud with your Apple ID. It's tied to your Apple ID. Because the former town manager's Apple ID had both his business and personal information, he took the Apple ID with him. And unfortunately, that means that those text messages are with him as well in the cloud tied to his Apple ID. We do not have access to that Apple ID, so we do not have those records.
Would it be a good idea for us in the town to try to get those messages that are town related, that were part of the Apple ID that he used on company property?
Absolutely, and you know, people are thinking that the governments are big and bad because they won't let you do personal things on your assets, the town's assets, computers, telephones, whatever. What people don't understand is that anything that you put on a public device that is personal, it now becomes public record. And so it's really as much about protecting the employees as it is about protecting the town's assets. And so again, yes, you have to discern what those texts are about. You have an obligation to discern what's there and was it important or not important. And until you get that, and the only way to get it may be through a subpoena.
That was my understanding, but I wanted to make sure that's what you thought as well.
So we just subpoena the Apple ID so that we can get into there.
You'd have to ask your attorney. I'm assuming that's the way it will go down.
And then, so we would have to subpoena, if we subpoenaed the Apple ID, then we could get into the phone to see what's personal versus what's town and pull the town stuff so we could see what those messages were.
I'm not sure that that's the best approach. There are probably several ways that we could go about that. Definitely have to have some kind of action, court action to recover.
The only other thing I wondered is there, because it is public, is there through a forensics IT audit can they recover. And that would be the easiest way. If that can be done through a forensics IT audit and recovered that way, that would be your easiest way. Because again, anything on that public device is yours.
You were talking to earlier about the personnel files containing the information about the vacation time. And of course, we see some of that information here in front of us. If we would like to see that information from the personnel files that backs up this letter, do we have access to that?
I think you would, but coming into the office and sitting down with the town manager and making sure that, it's, again, controls to make sure nothing gets removed or nothing gets added.
I understand.
So,
Yeah, because I know there's always concern about making, personnel files are confidential, but as the people
council member.
as a council member, I'm not so sure where that, it's kind of gray, I understand, I don't know where that lies, so.
Mr. Hoffman?
You'll
I don't understand the question.
He wants to know if, as a council member, if you wanted to look at some of the information, like I said, there was nothing in one of the employees' file that shows, in her personnel file, that shows that she went from part-time to full-time and was able to accrue all that vacation. He wants to know if he wants to come behind me and check some of those things out, my facts. Can he look in her personnel file as a council member?
The manager is controlling the personnel file.
Well, what I said was, I didn't know if under the manager's supervision, that they could sit down together. Only you can answer that question.
might have to look into that.
I think that they can look at certain parts of the file, not disciplinary action if there was any, but as far as pay and benefits, that is public record that could be requested even from the public. I mean, it's quite well known what the manager makes in every town. It's publicized all over the newspaper. So those parts of the personnel file, I think you could absolutely look at, but.
So, hold on just a second. You said pay and benefits are public record.
Salary is not confidential, and salary includes pay.
But that's not what we've been told.
compensation.
Well, I can tell you that the Charlotte News and Observer published all of our salaries in state government every year.
I'm a teacher, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it is.
So,
That's good to know, because during that period of time, there was a little, it was made sort of confusing over what we could know, because I do believe we inquired some about the vacation time. I think we were
Well,
very
and
much
I think that the records that I looked at were timesheets, and there is a record of what you've accrued, what you've earned, what you've used, and what's left over. And that's not a personnel record. That's not in a personnel file. That's in the town, in their, I would say, human resources, maybe payroll module or payroll records. Y'all use QuickBooks, so I'm not sure what's manual and what's
because
automated.
during that time, I think somebody here, maybe someone could say, did anybody here ask about vacation time?
I did send an email asking.
Yeah, and did you get any sort of response that, I don't mean like a response, but a response that actually told you what you were
No.
looking for? Okay. And,
And if I could add, those letters that you were asking about, they do not have anything that's personnel confidential related. So you could see those letters.
good. You also said on page 6 that when you're talking about after the person had turned in their notice, I believe, is that what that was? Let me see.
Yep, well,
She turned in her notice, and then after that, there was a room book, and we were able to obtain a partial refund. Is that the new administration that was able to get that refund? Is that something that happened? Mr. Rollins, is that you that was able to get that refund? Or,
So what happened was, I will say, her resignation letter is, there was no initial resignation letter that we can find. But there was a subsequent resignation letter that said her previous resignation date. She stated her resignation date was May 17th, the charges confirmed by the hotel were done on May 21st. It was paid in June,
On the former finance officer's last day,
yes.
she took the credit card bill from you and paid it.
It wasn't a bill, she logged into the system and just paid the charges that were to date. There was no statement yet, 'cause the statement wasn't ready until the next day.
So that's why not the approvals.
Yes,
It's when the bill was paid.
yes. So when,
So she paid that with the knowledge that she's paying for somebody who wasn't even there at that point?
Who had resigned?
who had resigned, yes, and was no longer employed at the time on June 10th, yes.
Huh.
And it was booked for the future, which was August, so it should have, had it been a legitimate charge, it would have been charged to prepaid, but it wasn't, it was expense. And so what happened was a credit came on the credit card, and when we researched the credit, we found out that the hotel was a no-show fee, so they kept one night no-show, but refunded the rest of the charges. And it was confirmed that the reservation was made after the termination date, or the resignation date. Now, the only thing we have based on that resignation date is a subsequent resignation. So if that resignation date was correct, then it was booked after the resignation. If that initial resignation date was incorrect, then the town policy says employees are not to be paid their accrued vacation if they do not give 2 weeks' notice. So then 2 weeks' notice would not have been given, and this employee would not have been due their vacation. So
And we don't have those,
I'll just leave it at the facts.
we don't have that resignation letter?
Not the initial one, I don't know if it was,
I thought, weren't we told that they were all like slid under the door on
Yeah.
on that Sunday?
We were told that.
Yeah.
So are any of those resignation letters in the files?
yes, but for this individual,
Okay,
she
so-
claimed that she gave one date and that she changed her date to move up her last day.
Yeah.
But her initial resignation, there's no record of it in the personnel file. In the personnel file, all the pages are numbered, so we have ensured that no pages are missing from the personnel file, but there is no record of this person resigning on the date that they claim to have resigned. And those,
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Luther.
yes,
So can I ask a question?
sure,
This was paid on a town credit card.
yes.
And I know because I had to go to the bank to help you get credentials to do, because I was a check signer. So
Yes.
I know every single, I'm not going to say every single, but there were several employees that still had outstanding credit cards, or they were still open but not being used. And we made sure all those were closed. So is there in a policy that as soon as a resignation is turned in, that credit card's taken? Or is that something we need to do going forward? And
That is not in the current policy. You can create either a policy or best practices for going forward. As we discussed several times in the past, a lot of your policies are majorly outdated because they go back to 2005, 2012, 2013, 11. They're majorly outdated. They need to be updated. And your current town manager and I have discussed it. Your current finance officer and I have discussed it, and they're working on it, but there's a lot to work on. So those are things that need to be put in place, procedures, policies, changes, yes. A lot of things need to be spelled out, and there should be, whenever anybody resigns, there should be an exit process, which should include an exit interview, should include retrieval of certain documents, retrieval of keys, and we know for a fact that that process was not followed, because I'm one of them, I still had to keep town hall for 10 years. So we know for a fact that those things were not being followed and need to be followed. Proper exit interviews and exit processes.
And you were there the last few days, weren't you? At the town hall before the former manager left?
Yes, I was there Friday and Monday, these last 2 days.
And you were there to help transition, right?
Yes,
waiting for the passwords. Like, they
Yes.
knew you were there to get the passwords.
Yes, that was blatant and that it was stated.
But again, I will tell you that Grand Creek says, just because somebody tells
Right.
them to give me your passwords or hand these off to somebody else, until this council were to put together a letter or put together a resolution and say, this is the person, then Grand Creek was probably not gonna give them up.
And let me just clarify, it wasn't Grain Creech that was supposed to give me the passwords, it was the town manager.
I don't know that the town manager should have given them to you.
He had the passwords and he sent them to Grain Creech instead of giving them to me. And that was the intent of why it was supposed to be a handoff at the end of the day. That's what was understood. That's what was communicated to the manager. That's what was communicated to me. And I even stated that blatantly, that I was not going to be in town the next day, which was the first day that he would be gone, and that I needed access to the systems because I had previously scheduled family matters that council knew about before I ever even came on board. So it was stated that I was going to be out of town, I needed access to the systems, and I needed the passwords before I left that day. And the IT vendor and the town manager were in there when it was stated, and I was not told otherwise. And I also wasn't
Again,
told that
I would not, and I would expect my IT company not to do anything without this
So they
board.
have the letter.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
even
yeah.
to an attorney, just for safekeeping, just keep it there and not even to an attorney.
But Ms. Woods, you said you don't think that, just to help us understand, that the manager should have given it over to Ms. Luther. Would you talk about that?
Because, so, if you have two people that just want to trade passwords or whatever, this board has to have control of what your IT vendor does. And so, again, Grand Creech tells me that they were not handing anything over without some document from this board.
and they shouldn't have. That's accurate, they should not have. And
And
that's
so
why
when
this is not
the
on
town
them.
manager going out the door says, give me the somebody says, give me the passwords, I don't know if they should have, without a document that Gray and Creech was comfortable with.
When we had to write a letter saying who. There was a point where we did a letter, and it said, name the new
Finally.
person. It was after the fact?
I don't know how much after the fact, but
It was the next day, so the town, so Grain Creech informed me that they had instructed the manager what to do for the transition. I asked for documentation of their instructions to the manager. I did not get any documentation. What I did get was an off-boarding checklist, because apparently they had resigned and I was not told. So they were there on site that day to off-board themselves pretty much, to get everything ready for a new IT vendor. I was not told this, I was not made aware of this. And I was, and
Should we have been made aware, Ms. Woods, that they had resigned? Because nobody made us aware at the time that that company had resigned.
I mean, certainly they should. I'm gonna say this, your town manager, and thank goodness you have the one that you have. I know his reputation across North Carolina, and I have worked with him on one other unit of government. I know him, no other than that, other than his reputation. But, again, you're putting all this information, the access to the server, access to computers, passwords, you're putting this under one person. There has to be an awareness of the council that this person, this administrator, is going out the door, and here's our plan to make sure the new person and the right person. It should have been, the new interim is going to ask the old interim, again, is there a clash, is there issues, is there whatever. It should be coming down from the council. This is what's going to happen, and the instructions should have come to you, to Gray and Creech, and then this would not have happened.
So create a policy procedure going forward where if we have this transition again, there is a duty to do X, Y, Z, and it's laid out.
But we did ask for the passwords way ahead of time,
Yeah.
and at that point.
And Gray and Creech said they got a lot.
Asked the manager for it, and at that point, maybe it would have been ideal if the manager would have said, we need a letter to give it to you, or we need a letter to give it to the next person.
I think it should have been between you and the IT vendor,
Okay.
not
We weren't
ask,
allowed to talk to the IT vendor.
well,
Yeah, you were.
Well, we were told only the manager was allowed to talk to the IT vendor. We were not allowed to contact them directly.
But you've made it very clear that we need to make sure that's very thorough going forward.
who the IT vendor works for too.
May I interject, Ms. Woods? The current policy that I put in place on behalf of the board that I've instructed rate increase, certainly it's your pleasure to change it is that North Carolina state law says you must have a manager and a clerk at all times,
Yep.
period. No ifs, ands, or buts about it.
Yep.
You fired Mr. Twig Rollins today, you make Jim Hoffman the manager, you do a resolution signed by the clerk with your town seal, they will take that and they will give him every password there is in the kingdom. Right now, I'm the holder of every password.
Right.
I'm the master password holder. That is the policy I've instilled for the time being. Now, again, it's your pleasure to change it, but that's the proper way it should be done, the way it was done at my last town, and the way I've been trained. But you're required to have a manager at all times. The moment you name an interim manager, and you have to do that by vote with a resolution, your clerk puts the town seal on it, presents that to the IT company, says, this is our new manager. So that's what's in place right now. So just want to make sure to rest people there, the passwords are under control right now. I have them, and that's the instructions I've given to them.
And of course, at that time period, the way does it appear as though that the way everyone left in the manner that they did and the time frame that they did it seem intentional to handicap the town?
That's my question. Was there malicious intent?
That is a hard thing to prove, and I've had a conversation with the SBI. That is a hard thing to prove.
And
The SBI,
was there a duty for
State Bureau of Investigation?
Yes,
was there a duty for the manager at the time when he knew that the clerk would not be there? Because the clerk is one of the state required positions. Should he have taken any steps to secure somebody before he left?
sure. I mean, I read your policies. It's in there what his responsibilities are, yes.
Did we find any evidence that he was going to fill that spot or try to fill that spot anyway?
I have not looked.
Okay. Thank you.
So based on the amount of money that was paid out, shouldn't have been paid out, is there a way to get that back? Just out of luck, or what's the next step forward?
I think for the federal withholding taxes, that the employee is to their best interest to give that money back and let you pay the federal government. Because if you don't, you're gonna get penalized, they're gonna get penalized, and so that's to nobody's benefit.
Okay.
All the other stuff, the vacation time that the person was paid, I mean, you can ask for it. I don't know how much money it is. Does it create more ill will? And if they say no, then it's gonna cost you more to get it back
Right.
than it was. So I think probably a true picture of what was going on, and then making policies to make sure this kind of stuff doesn't happen again, and also bringing to your attention there might need to be a deeper dive in some of the other financial transactions. But again, the thing that impressed me most about working with Mr. Rollins is that he has not only great town manager skills, but he understands a lot of the financial, and I found that that's been probably the handicap of a lot of our smaller cities, is that the town manager has no idea about finances and what the numbers mean in the budget and whatever. And the finance officer can be in complete control of all the numbers. The fact that Mr. Rollins can, in fact, one of the first things he asked me, he said, get me a report of how much cash I got at the other town that he was at, because he knew, he couldn't find anything that told him how much cash the town had. So again, he's got a great working knowledge of financial operations of the town, as well as the operational type operations of the town.
And you're talking about a deeper dive. Really, your investigation was a very limited one. Was you were there just for one day?
Well, I was there for one day, asked for quite a lot of records, and verified the things you see here.
Gotcha. So if we wanted you to look into more, you'd be more than happy to do that.
Your forensics audit, IT audit, is the most pressing, and that my firm does not do those.
And do you
Do you have one you can recommend to do the IT?
I can get you one.
And then I guess the other one is to do the forensics on the phone?
but I think they would handle that too.
They would, okay.
If I could. Ms. Woods, based on your investigational assessment,
I love the way you put that.
reading through your summary report, which is quite detailed, is it accurate in what I'm reading that there is no paper records left in administrative offices?
That's exactly right.
Based upon your investigational assessment, reading through the summary report, the access to IT systems and passwords were withheld?
Grand Creek says no.
That's what she was talking about earlier.
Okay. Based upon your investigational assessment, you're saying that 119,000 gigabytes of data is missing.
There is a decrease from, yes, January to June. Now, did the former town manager have that many personal files? I don't know. Because he removed a lot. According, it took him almost a day to remove a lot of things. And this again is what Grand Creek attested to in my discussions with them. But I mean, here 12 years, did he have that much? So again, you won't know until there's a forensics IT audit done what was removed.
You have mentioned an IT forensics audit a few times now. What will that provide us?
They'll be able to recover the data that was deleted, and then you'll have an opportunity to discern which is town data that needs to be restored on your server and what is just personal data that belong to the former town manager.
This was, your report mentions that this document outlines the assertions, allegations, findings, and the recommendations. You have put in your summary multiple times a violation of policy. Is that true? That policies were not followed?
I believe that the policy that paid out accrued vacation for the one employee who did not have extenuating circumstances, I believe that is a violation of the policy as I described it. Again, there was a financial hardship when that policy was put in place, and that's when the words extenuating circumstances came into play back in 2013. And so given, if you read the minutes around the 2013 change and amendment to the policy, for sure the former town manager's payment of accrued vacation is a violation of the policy.
Okay. So,
and then the payout of the 14 hours to the 3 employees, 6 hours of petty leave and 8 hours of personal time off is a violation of both of those policies.
And the full-time slash part-time, that'd be an issue too, right?
Well, you know, how that happened, you'd have to go investigate how that happened. Was it intentional? Was it just, I put everybody in at full-time accrual, and so this person just accidentally got in there at full-time accrual? You'd have to do a deeper dive to determine if that was intentional or an accident.
I guess it's a bit when there's nobody around who was there at that time, right?
And the situation there was the person had accrued 200 and some hours by the end of 23, but because they were part-time, the limit is 30 days, and if you multiply their part-time hours times 30, it comes to the 144. So although they had accrued more, they weren't entitled to be paid out that more. They should have rolled into sick. Then their increase, their accrual went up, and that may have been for longevity purposes in terms of how long they've been with the town. But the key was it should have rolled, and it shouldn't have been paid out, because they were part-time at 12/31, they were getting accrued part-time at 12/31, and they were part-time at 12/31 times their 30 days.
And from what I understand, the place was pretty much bereft of documents. Ms. Dockery, was there any documents around for planning, event planning? Nothing that you saw?
And I would like to clarify that it was administrative, not financial. Financial records were there. But it was the administrative records were the ones.
Ms. Woods, this is a lot of information. I still feel like I need to digest it after this meeting. However, if I could be candid with you, from the synopsis of this report, the inappropriate accruals, the payouts, and the lack of council approval, and the transparency and communication that's outlined in this report, do you feel that there is potentially embezzlement?
You won't know until you get a deeper dive. I will tell you that the feeling that, and talking to staff that are there now, no. The answer to the question is no. But you won't know until you do a deeper dive.
Okay. Are you able to ascertain, based upon what you have seen so far, that there was collusion?
I know what I believe, but I can't prove. And I know what I can prove. I can't prove that there was collusion.
And you are recommending a deeper dive?
Yes.
Thank you.
I have 3 questions. Oh, were you done, Hugh?
Yes, ma'am.
Does any of these findings, do any of them reflect on the previous auditor?
Probably not. And I'm glad you asked that, Ms. Robinson, because I want to say this. When you get your financial statement audit, if you read the opinion, it says these numbers don't have any big errors in them. The numbers on these pages, the notes to that gives you a sense of what your financial statement audit opinion is. What it's looking for is financial statement audits are for creditors. What is your financial health? How much debt do you have? What are your liabilities? And will we loan you money?
So does a perfect audit,
There is no perfect audit. You can have a clean opinion, but there's no such thing as a perfect audit. Because
so a
in
perfect
every
audit wouldn't, this doesn't reflect a perfect, there's no such thing as a perfect audit.
There's no such thing as a perfect audit, and they're looking at your numbers. Is cash fairly stated? You say you got $7 million worth in cash, and the auditor is attesting that you really do, plus or minus some number. Do you have this amount of receivables? Do you have these assets that belong to the town? The auditor's opinion is saying, I've looked at their numbers, and yes, they do, plus or minus some number.
Okay.
And then you get down to the bottom line in your fund balance and on your government-wide financial statements, it shows you the financial position of this town. And the auditor is saying, yes, this materially reflects the financial position of this town, and that is all a financial statement audit is.
It is interesting that on the bottom, at the end of all of our audits, it has said in the years past that we need more checks and balances because we're small. So that actually kind of applies. My second question is it the finance officer's duty to know if federal taxes have to be paid on payroll or if they are allowed to
It is absolutely that person's duty. Absolutely.
And you're saying it was actually, earlier you said it was done, what,
It was done right. It was done right. So they figured out how much accrued vacation they had, which was like $26,000. So they gave them 23 plus and withheld 36 plus, let's say. And then the gentleman came back and said, I don't want any federal taxes withheld. So they gave him his federal taxes. So he got his entire, let's say, $27,000 in accrued paid vacation, accrued vacation. He got the whole $27,000 with no taxes withheld, but it was done in 2 transactions. Was the first one canceled? I thought what I saw was that there was another deposit, direct deposit. for the taxes that he wanted.
You know, I'd have to look.
I was thinking that's the way I saw it, because they're paid direct deposit.
Yes,
So the first time it was done right, comes back and says, I don't want it. And so there was another direct deposit for the difference, as I'm remembering the records that I saw. But the bottom line was, got the whole 27,000, and absolutely your finance officer,
Sure, none, that's a minimum.
absolutely.
So is it against the law to not?
IRS rules, I guess so. I mean, I tell you there's rules, but if you're not doing what IRS says, I would say that, yeah.
Okay. My third question might be more for our manager. When we look at the files that are missing from the backup from January to June, obviously the difference in there is when we decided not to renew the manager's contract. That's the importance of why we picked.
Whatever the pleasure of the board is, I mean,
What
you certainly don't
consensus?
have to make a decision tonight.
Does
You
it
can
have
talk about it, you can reconvene another meeting. It's really whatever the pleasure of the board. You have the facts as they've been presented by an outside third party. And so it's up to you as a board to decide what you're going to do with it.
does it need to be in a motion or a consensus?
I think it needs to be in a motion,
Can we try to do it?
Yeah.
whatever you want to do.
So I move that Mr. Rollins be able to pursue the investigation started by Ms. Beth Woods to continue to obtain all records that might be missing from the town, and to, is there anything else that you, Mr. Rollins?
Do we need to
Help me
specify?
fashion
No
this.
disrespect,
Yeah,
Councilman Hamilton, but that's a little ambiguous. Pursue the investigation. I mean, I don't have the time unless I'm a full-time investigator.
I mean to allow, to pursue it through Ms. Woods or,
Again, that is y'all's prerogative. If you want Ms. Woods to dig deeper, then I can engage in soliciting an agreement from her, which I would need to bring back to y'all if it exceeds the current budgeted funds under auditing services. Or if you want to use a forensic IT firm, I need to solicit bids under our current purchasing policy. So
would it be better then for you to speak with her, bring back, because I think Ms. Woods is going to try to also give us a recommendation for an IT firm, and to bring those things back and we just approve them next time.
I can
I
bring
don't
back.
want to wait a month
But
No,
we are
I'm-
meeting for the, when is the retreat?
on the 8th.
It's still a month, I mean, almost.
Yeah,
We can plan a special called meeting to vote on it.
is there some motion that you could help me with that would help you? I mean, I hate to ask it like that.
Is there something we can put together where we give
Give me some
Mr. Rollins
authority, yeah.
direction to work with Ms. Woods?
I think
He's allowed to do a payout per our policy of a certain number without going over that. At the same time, if she thinks it's gonna go past that number, then she needs to bring something back to us and we'll approve that later, but that can at least get the investigation started and help Mr. Rollins pinpoint what needs to be investigated, while at the same time, we're getting a potential, well, he has to do the bid for the firms that can go and do the deep dive in the phone and the,
Now,
IT.
with those bids, and Ms. Woods might be able to help us out here, with getting bids for places, a specialized service like this where you want somebody really good, I mean, do we still have to do the putting out bids, or are we able to go, so do bids, okay? So,
yes, sir.
so could we just vote on that, for you to go ahead and put it out for bid?
That would be one thing you could vote on, and then you can make a recommendation that I engage Greg Isley and Associates, which is Ms. Wood's firm, to get a proposal together to look at the other side of what y'all want looked into. And, give us some time for her firm to put together a proposal for that, and give me some time to get some ideas of what we're looking at for forensic auditing firms. But I would, the numbers I'm hearing is gonna be right teeter-tottering along a formal bid process, so it's gonna take some time to engage the forensic auditor, because we have to follow North Carolina purchasing laws.
Mr. Hamilton, I think I know where you're coming from and the intent that you're trying to do. And if I may, I think maybe the direction that we need to give to you, Mr. Rollins, is to continue this deeper dive in this investigational assessment to include the IT forensics audit.
Yeah.
Is that general enough to
And
get
I
what we
think
need?
let me see if I can take a stab at it this way and stop me if it's wrong. So I moved that Town Manager Charles Rollins put out for bid for the IT forensic audits and to engage the firm of Greg Isley and Associates to get a proposal put together to continue their investigation that Ms. Woods has already started. Would that be sufficient?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Do we need to put out for a bid, though?
And you absolutely have to put the forensic stuff out for bid.
So we can't
It's gonna-
name the company until we do the bid.
No, sir. You have to absolutely, I have to advertise it, put it out for bids, solicit bids, because it's gonna be over the $30,000 more than likely mark, which is the market, the line in the sand, if you will, when it comes to purchasing law for the state of North Carolina. It's not an informal bidding process, it goes to a formal one.
Okay.
Mason, did you get that? So, there's my motion.
Do we have a motion, do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Have a motion and a second, further discussion?
Could you repeat your motion?
Yeah, repeat it, please.
I move that Town Manager Charles Rollins put out for bid for an IT forensic audit, as well as engage Greg Isley and Associates to get a proposal put together to continue the investigation that Ms. Woods has started.
I'm just gonna say the firm name is GWI,
GWI.
Tax and Accounting.
Can we be that descriptive and the
He's not naming someone from the three bids. He's saying for them to help with the process, I think is what you're saying, right?
Yeah, for her to continue
The
what she
last
started.
question is,
You've got two different things here, council, bear with me. You've got a motion that says for me to put out for bid and bring back to you the results and the recommended bidders for forensic accounting. The other part of that motion, as I understand it, is that you're directing me to engage with GWI to put forth a proposal to look at everything outside of the computer records.
Yes, that's what I understand.
And
That's
to
what I-
bring back a proposal from them if it exceeds our current budgeted. We have a bucket of money for auditing services, we're
Right.
using simple terms here, and we're nowhere near exhausted that for the year, thanks to Ms. Luther's work. Our audit was way less, the cost of it was way less than was projected to be in this year's budget, so there's some leftover funds. As long as I don't exceed those funds, I can engage them to have them take a deeper dive, if that's your direction.
That's my direction. I think that's what help people.
You give that message. And the attorney concurred with that motion.
Thank you for the assist.
Yes, sir.
Further discussion on the motion and the second?
Mason, are you good?
Who gave the second?
No.
Mr. Rollins, since we're just seeing this, if all of these things included here financially are added up, what would be the total of these errors, mistakes?
Mr. Mayor, I have no idea. I mean, I would say less than $50,000
Yeah.
for the vacation and payments and.
How much would you say it is in total
Disregarding.
of what we've heard here tonight?
Yeah, disregarding the federal taxes, I know the one payout was like $4,000, so if you take the others into account, max of 10, then that's disregarding the federal taxes, because I did not look at how much he had elected in his W-4 or anything.
So in total, it's $10,000?
Yes, in terms of the vacation, so forth, and the payouts related to the vacation.
But he's asking total, right?
Well, like I said, I can't even speak to the federal taxes because I didn't look at the employees' W-4.
Well, outside the taxes on that, it's 10,000 or less.
Yes, based on the items identified here, yes.
And this is 10,000 from a relatively small period of time. Is that right?
Yes.
Well, it seems like it's a period of time from after the town manager was notified his contract wasn't going to be continued until the time, such time he left, is what it seems like to me, but, so during this investigation, was the town manager ever contacted and asked about these things?
Let me just state this. I put in the report that it was a preliminary work, and I had from last week till now, I have documentation to support everything that's in my report, but I have not talked to, there was no time yet.
Okay, so he was not called,
But
contacted?
you know that some of these things have been brought up and have had the opportunity.
That's a
and
yes
have
or no
talked to you.
answer, and the answer is yes. I have not.
Was the finance director contacted about any
No.
of these payouts to see if a simple explanation exists?
I don't know if this.
I'm not sure how simple against, when you violate a
So from
policy.
a personnel
Oh, she's
perspective,
talking, I move that Ms. Woods be allowed to finish her.
sure,
I was just gonna say, from a violation of a policy, I don't know how much of an accident that can be,
from the violation of a what?
of your policies.
And your personnel policy.
So then you would say there's nothing in a personnel policy that would prohibit a town from having someone come and make a presentation, making all the indications and accusations that we've made here tonight. You don't think that violates a personnel policy?
You misunderstood what I said, and what I'm trying to tell you is that particularly the first 3 items is in violation of a policy, and I don't know where an accident can happen to violate a policy. That's what I was getting to. But have I spoken to any of these departed employees? No. To answer your simple question.
Okay. So I guess we're indicating no one knows who the previous town manager is or the previous finance director was.
I think you all know who they are, but I was not about to put their names in a public document.
Okay. Any further discussion?
Yeah, I have a question. I mean, you knew about a lot of these things. Did you reach out to them and ask about it?
I don't think it's appropriate to be speaking to this, which is why I haven't been speaking to it.
Okay.
But it sounds like there'll be plenty of time going forward to speak to that. So I'll be happy to answer that in the future.
Well, what
Any
is-
other discussion?
He asked her, did
This
she
is a
speak?
discussion.
Right,
Yes,
we're
I'm having a
discussing.
discussion.
This is part of it.
He asked her, did she speak to the former employees? And so I asked him, because he
I-
knew
no,
about many of these
I did-
topics,
I did not
discuss any of these
no,
things.
I did not do an investigation. No,
I didn't ask,
not.
did you investigate? I said, have you talked to them? Because maybe you can give us a easy answer of how this was just an accident.
Yeah, I could, but I don't think it's
And what is
appropriate.
it?
I don't think it's appropriate here at this time to do that.
But it's all public knowledge. It's public record. Why can't we know?
Because this could be moving toward a court case.
We've been asking you about some of these things for months. And we know you've had contact with them, and you have never brought to us any answers to any of these things. So you have had the opportunity to
I've
clear up
never been
things.
tasked with providing you answers to
Not
anything.
tasked, we've talked about it to you.
Yeah, you talked about it. You talked about all
So
this
if you
stuff.
thought there was an easy answer of, hey, why don't we just ask them, you've had that opportunity. You
No,
have
these
their phone
things,
numbers.
these things
We
here, these
don't.
specific things, no.
Yes, you
I
have.
have not.
We've talked about those brown
No, I
boxes
have
and
not.
files
Yes,
that are
we did
missing.
talk
Yes,
about
we
that.
I've
have.
heard you all talking about it.
And you
Yes.
have their phone numbers, and
In
you could have reached
closed
out.
session, and you have their phone number.
No, you don't. I don't have any, no. You think he gave us his new phone number?
You
No.
don't have
Mr.
the previous
Sessions.
finance, you don't
I
have the
deleted
previous
all of them
employees?
from my phone immediately.
Okay, so you did have them, you deleted them.
Mayor
Yes.
Sessions, during your time at
Look,
Town,
this is not an investigation of me.
it's a discussion.
You
I think we should be able to talk to the
And this
mayor.
is not a discussion. It's a discussion of your motion.
Well, you
Yeah,
could
I'm
have
asking
asked, you
some
could have asked
simple
your
questions.
questions about the investigation during the questioning time.
I didn't
but you
ask her
chose-
anything, I asked Mr.
Right.
Rollins a question.
Okay, but you're asking your questions now, but now we
I'm
can't
not
discuss
asking
your
any more
questions.
questions, I asked
But
this
you
in
did,
further
and you
discussion.
didn't do it during the
I asked Mr.
discussion
Rollins a
time.
question, she stood up and approached the microphone.
Okay.
So Mayor Sessoms, you asked her about communications that she may have had with him. And I think as the mayor, for a little bit of transparency, we just want to know a few things from you. I mean, if we're getting ready to make this motion to do more investigation, if you're saying it's a little premature, by all means, pipe up a little bit. So, you were there a lot during the final
Well,
days.
if you've understood what I'm saying,
didn't
it
get a chance
sounds
to
like
ask my
I've piped
question,
up
but-
enough.
Is it possible that Mayor Pro Tem Devine may take the gavel and moderate while we have the discussion? Because since you're engaging in discussion.
No, it's not.
Okay,
You have to do that purple roll.
so,
No, I do not.
Purple book,
okay.
yes you do.
So-
Purple book.
It's your
rules.
purple book.
How much time did you spend with Mr. Whitaker on the last day,
I stayed until the end, until he left.
until he left?
Do you know
Yeah.
what he was deleting?
I came downstairs and told y'all what he was moving. And you
Did,
know that.
did you, Have a
I will
meeting.
not sit here and be interrogated. I will not.
well, you could clear things up for everybody right now if there's nothing wrong. This is a perfect opportunity for us to talk to you
No.
about a few things.
No.
Because a lot of us have been curious about it.
I'll speak to the record when there's a record.
Well,
And it
Yes,
sounds like
yes.
there'll be one.
so if you wouldn't mind telling us, it seems like there is some claims that a lot of documents are missing at Town Hall. Did you notice documents missing at Town Hall?
Wait a minute, that's you, this is not right.
I'm not
This
answering
is a
these
legal
questions.
issue. You're drilling this
Thank-
man like
thanks,
you're
sir.
in court. You're taking
Thank
him
you.
to court. You need
Yeah.
an attorney.
It's not a
I
courtroom.
would stop
I'm
it
not
if
on
I
the
were
stand.
you.
It's
I
not,
really would. I'd stop
but
Right
wait,
there.
Thanks, sir.
it.
Hey,
Not right.
Hey, folks, thank you, thank you. We have a motion on the table. Is there any further discussion on the motion?
I see the box.
If not, I'll call the question.
I have just
well,
one
the
thing.
discussion that we're talking about is, the motion that I made was for investigation. From what I understand from Mayor Sessoms, that may be premature. So every time we try to ask questions about it though, you say we can't discuss it. From what I recall, I think at one point in a discussion with Janelle, and Janelle, tell me if I'm right or wrong, but I think that you said that you had spoken with an attorney and that you didn't even need to come to the meetings anymore. So I'm getting concerned that you're not taking part in this. If there's things that you do not know or know, as a mayor who owes a duty to the town, we would like to have that discussion with you.
Okay, but for right now, we're the ones that are gonna have to make the vote. Do we want the investigation to go, and it's on the 5 of us. So we need to make that motion and make that vote, and then we'll move forward, and all that will come to the surface.
Like I said, if Mayor Sessoms wants to say anything that would stop us from doing that, I'm open to hearing it.
Okay. I do have one question. So your motion is gonna have part A, part B, kind of like Mr. Rollins said,
Right.
and we're square on that, Mason?
Yep.
Okay, all right. And you second it, so
Could you repeat the motion?
No, I have
No.
a purple.
I actually did.
Can the clerk repeat the motion?
Yes.
Yes, Mr. Clark, could you please repeat the motion?
Well, I got the first part of the motion, which is to put out a bid for audit, for IT forensics, to get a proposal together to continue the investigation proposed by Mrs. Wood.
Second half was that he would work with
Ms.
Woods.
Woods.
for
GWI.
investigation within the funding available.
Correct. They would take a deeper dive and use the funding as available, that is available, currently available.
Any other questions about the motion?
I'm gonna vote for, I'm gonna vote for it, and I'm hoping that all this is for naught, that we're wasting money looking at this, that everything's above board, so I'm hopeful, so that's.
Okay, so-
All right, we'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries unanimous.